theater, not as much as I know exists in other committees, and I've always strived, and I know Ranking Member, or now Chairman Paul, share the notion that we want to be a fact-based committee and try to find tangible solutions to the tough problems that we face, and data is important. We've heard a lot of numbers being thrown around here, and I don't have time to go through and challenge those numbers. Some of them we don't even know where they came from. I don't think that's helpful to the very important mission, if confirmed, that you're going to be dealing with. So I hope in the future that we're actually dealing with facts. You've mentioned many times that you do want to deal with facts and real data. And again, we heard a lot here that's not real data, and we should not operate that way. And if confirmed, when we move forward, I'm going to look forward to working with you based on the facts and understand where the real threats are, how we need to appropriate resources to make sure we're meeting those threats. And let's take this hyper-partisanship out of such an important issue of Homeland Security. We have way too much partisanship in this country, and it's resulted in a polarization of people here. We've got to come together as this country. We've got to lock arms and understand that we're all proud Americans. We all want to do what's best for the American people and solve the issues that are before us. So in that spirit, and certainly you've communicated that spirit to me, but in that spirit, I hope, if confirmed, that is exactly what you will be bringing to this office. And let's move away from of this toxic political environment that we have in the country and celebrate what's great about our country and the spirit of bringing the American people together. So I have one question before we turn it over to other members. As a member of this committee, as well as the Armed Services Committee, I've focused a great deal on the safe integration of drones in our airspace while addressing the growing threats that drones possess. We certainly see what drones are doing in changing the face of warfare, whether it's in Ukraine and other battlefields around the world. We are very concerned about the weaponization of those drones and what it could mean to the security here in the United States. I've proposed comprehensive legislation to extend authorities beyond just the FBI and DOJ and Homeland Security to local law enforcement. You mentioned in your comments about security for the Super Bowl, which is incredibly important. We have to remember that that threat exists for all games. In fact, one of the biggest supporters of my legislation is the NFL. In fact, we just had a recent playoff game that was delayed because of drones that flew into that playoff game. We are very concerned that you could have a drone with a grenade or an explosive device, which would be absolutely catastrophic. It's absolutely essential that we address this threat. What we're seeing around the world and what we're seeing in daily activities should be a concern. I think this is just a matter of time. It's not if, it's when, and we need to be on the front end of that. And with that in mind, I want to remind folks that Congress just recently extended critical counter UAS authority, counter drone authority, only for a short time basis for the 12th time. We only do these little tiny short-term extensions, and we aren't dealing with the problem comprehensively as we should. And those are going to expire on March 14th, a very short time from now. And so my question for you, Governor, is if confirmed as DH Secretary, will you commit to working with me and my colleagues to pass durable, long-term authorities that will protect this country from what is a real threat and it's just a matter of time? And I don't want to have a horrible incident occur and people wonder why we didn't take action beforehand. So please address that.
Senator, I look forward to working with you in this committee to address the threats we may face and the usage of drones in this country and in relation to our national security interests and our homeland security interests. So thank you for bringing up the conversation today, because it is one of the areas within DHS that we have a responsibility to address in cooperation with Congress.
And my first comments on bringing people together. Please comment on that.
Oh, well, thank you,
I didn't
sir.
ask that question,
yes,
but
no.
it's in my 24 seconds left.
I'm looking forward to working with everyone, Republicans and Democrats, and everyone else in between that in this country that is focused on keeping America safe and secure for our future. I would just point, Senator, to my background and my history. When I came to Congress, I worked with Republicans and Democrats on both sides of the aisle on many pieces of legislation and was very happy to do so and focus on priorities on where we could agreement, knowing we may disagree on some issues, but there was areas where we could keep the federal government accountable and do due diligence by the people that pay their taxes and get up and go to work every single day. As governor as well, I was governor for every single person in the state of South Dakota, and they were my #1 priority, and everyone knew there that it didn't matter if you were Republican or Democrat, that my focus was on them and keeping our state thriving and free. So I look forward to continuing the work that I always have to be coming up with solutions and in a bipartisan manner. And hopefully my visits to your office and conversations reflected that and my intention on how I would conduct the role as the Department of Homeland Security Secretary.
Got a brief follow-up to that.
Sure.
So it's data
Yes.
and facts that we can all agree on that drive our policy and not political theater. Would you agree?
Well, certainly, sir, we need to be addressing facts and information rather than political theater. We also need to speak truth to facts. So I think it's important that we're willing to confront our challenges head on and have those conversations. And you'll see me back at your office door very soon to continue our work together.
Very good. Thank you.
And I want to second basically what Senator Peters has said. Like on records requests, I've told him, and I plan on it, it's going to be administration of my party. But if he wants records and they're legitimate records, we're going to sign requests together, and we'd like to get the records. It also helps, though, and I think Senator Langford mentioned this, is you ask a question, not you, but to the administration or any administration, they're like, oh, yeah, we'll get back to you on it. Many times I've even asked in advance, and I would suggest that we ask in advance together. We ask in advance, if you're coming in a month, we say we want this data, be prepared to talk about it. And if you are, you'll have many more friends on both sides because what usually happens, and that's why I don't like springing the question. If it's a technical question that needs data, we're going to tell you in advance, at least I will, and we want you to come prepared with that. And that goes a long way because really what happens is we get stiff-armed. They say, we'll get back to you, and then we have no way to force you really, other than we could cut the money off, and nobody ever does that. But you'll have 200,000 people working for you. By goodness, send your experts out, scour the records. And it is true. I mean, facts are difficult, and sometimes there's different spins on the same set of facts. But I think that will help. On the drones, I think we need more facts, you know, so I'm more than willing to work with the ranking member on doing something on drones, but I don't want every sheriff out there shooting up in the sky at stuff. We got to figure out, we got to get the truth about, do we really have drones everywhere flying all the time? How many of them are planes? How many of them are drones? And let's go through this, and then let's figure out, and then let's talk about how we bring drones down. If we interrupt and collect a lot of cellular signal through that, are we doing it with a warrant? What are we going to do with all the Americans' data that we've collected to take down drones? If we have to take a whole cell tower's worth of data, there's a lot of innocent people's data is going to be collected in that. Is that being gotten rid of? So I think there are ways we can get to the right place. Everybody, obviously, nobody wants drones coming down. And the only other thing that I'd add on drones before I turn it over to Senator Langford is, look, I'm all for the NFL being protected, the Super Bowl being protected. They need to pay. They are a very rich organization. They want drones flying over in New Orleans. I'm all for it. The NFL ought to pay the government if the government's doing it, or we ought to have private contractors doing it, but they shouldn't just get it for free. Senator Langford.
Thank you. Thanks again. As Senator Paul will remember on this, there used to be a public-facing website that all Americans could actually get the data, what's happening on the border, what's actually moving, and then when the numbers got bad, that seemed to disappear. And then we couldn't even get the data anymore. So I look forward to actually finding ways to be able to have everybody has the ability to be able to see some of this data as well on it. There's a reason that the DHS secretary is the very first week of nominations. This is a really important role, and it is a nonpartisan role. It is a national security role, and we're grateful that you stepped into this, but it is important that we actually get you on the task to be able to make sure that's out there. You mentioned earlier in your testimony that we do have a morale problem at DHS right now. And I think a lot of that is because people that signed up to be federal law enforcement to be able to protect the United States of America have felt like they've been sidelined and they've not been able to do their job that they really signed up for. And what I'm hearing from you is you're going to allow them to do their job again. What has been historically true for a long time, that federal law enforcement is there to actually help protect the country and the citizens in those communities, that you're going to allow them to do that, and that's helpful. So I have two quick things that I want to be able to mention on this. One is, right now, just in the structure of this, and we can talk about this at a different time, but CBP facilities that are along the border are really run by a different entity called GSA. And they're not allowed to be able to do updates on their facilities or to design their facilities. Somebody who lives 3,000 miles away and who doesn't actually do Border Patrol work, they actually design and oversee their facilities. That's a problem that we've got to be able to fix. So we've worked to be able to give more flexibility to CBP, that when they have difficulty and challenges there, they have the ability to be able to make those changes. But I'm not going to ask you to make a commitment to this because this is just one of those detail areas. But will you commit in the future to working with us, that this committee and you can work together to be able to figure out how the folks that are on the field can actually make decisions about the facilities they work in?
Yeah, Senator, I commit to working with you on that issue.
It's terrific. And then I had a constituent in Oklahoma that is a hunter, like you are, like I am.
Yeah.
He had a bag that he had some additional rounds that were in his bag that were left over from a hunting trip months before. He packed his bag, went on a vacation trip overseas, went through security with his bag. When he got overseas and then left and came back, they scanned his bag and said, "You have bullets, you have rounds in your bag." And he had, I think, 5 that were in his bag that he didn't even remember were left over in an outside pocket from a hunting trip before. Well, they promptly put him in jail and held him there and detained him there. Now, we worked through all the process to be able to get him back. My question is, that same bag went through TSA security in my state before it went through security overseas. And so one of the questions that I've asked is, why were those rounds picked up there and not here? Now, we don't have the full answer to that yet, but that's just one of those TSA questions that we need to have. Americans right now are on planes all over the country, and they count on a certain level of security when they go through that process. So in the days ahead, will you work with me to be able to identify what are the challenges that we still face with the screening process and to be able to correct those for the security of all Americans?
Yes, Senator, I will work with you on that.
Thank
I was
you very
surprised TSA didn't come up more today, but that is a area in need of reform as well, and I look forward to working with you there.
Look forward to that. Thank you. I yield back.
Government needs a healthy dose of common sense, bullets in your bag. I had a guy with bullets in the back of his pickup truck coming back from Mexico. We arrested him and took his truck, and only because the Institute of Justice fought for him for 3 years did he get his truck back. I mean, that's crazy, the things we do. Let's have some common sense, and hopefully someone overseeing it will allow that. Senator Blumenthal, you're going to finish this up.
Thank you, Chairman Paul. I'm the last of your questioners, so that means I get unlimited amounts of time.
Okay.
Not really. Not even close. I want to sort of continue the emphasis on bipartisanship and most especially on immigration reform. What this nation needs is comprehensive immigration reform. We know about the need for more H-1B visas and other kinds of extensions of the visa program that enable the United States to have more workers that are desperately needed in certain areas of our country. We know that there has to be better border security generally. We know we need to provide some kind of path to earn citizenship for a lot of the undocumented people in this country. And we know it's possible because we did it in 2013. The United States Senate, as you will recall, passed a comprehensive immigration reform measure. Overwhelmingly, it was bipartisan. I was proud to be a part of it going through the Judiciary Committee, but obviously it will involve Homeland Security. And I hope that we can continue, as Senator Langford was a part of the effort in the last session, to expand on those efforts and move forward on a bipartisan basis toward bipartisan, comprehensive immigration reform. I want to talk to you a little bit about domestic terrorism, which we discussed during my previous round, and I know you've discussed it afterward, including not just migrant crime and radicalization by ISIS, which are real and present problems. I also want to ask you about domestic terrorism events unrelated to groups outside our borders. We've seen a rise in anti-Semitism in this country. It has spiked beyond any prediction. And I want to know of your concern with anti-Semitist, racist events, Charlottesville, Buffalo, Pittsburgh. There's a shorthand for these violent terrorist acts against people in the United States.
Yes, Senator, I'm very concerned about what we've seen in this country as far as anti-Semitic violence that has happened. In fact, last year during our legislative session, I brought legislation to more clearly define it so that we could fight it in our home state. And I'm hopeful I can work with you to continue to do what we can to make sure that we are addressing this rising threat and not facilitating it in this country.
And I just want to make sure that when you say we're protecting Americans against terrorism, that we're protecting all Americans, including people in mosques, in churches, in synagogues, people regardless of their worship, their race, their background. We need to protect all Americans from anti-Semitism, racism, Islamophobia. I hope you'll commit to that effort.
Yes, correct. Thank you, Senator, and I look forward to working with you to do that.
In my closing minute and a half, I just want to call your attention to an effort that I've led to help reunite children with their parents, children who were separated as a result of the so-called family separation policy in the last administration. I have introduced a measure called Keep Families Together, not only to limit separation of families at or near ports of entry, but also the Families Belong Together Act for several Congresses to help bring the children, the kids who were victims of this policy and who still are not back with their parents. I hope that you will support that kind of effort.
Senator, the Trump administration never had a family separation policy. They had a zero tolerance policy, which said that our laws would be followed. What I'm alarmed by is the over 300,000 children that went missing during the Biden administration. And when we talk about children and what they're potentially facing as far as victimization in this country and the trafficking that's going on, this administration's lack of desire to find out where those children are or what they may be going through is alarming to me. So I want to stop that.
Because my time is expiring, I'm just going to interrupt again with apologies to say, let's put aside.
Well, I can't put aside 340,000 children.
Labels. Let's put aside what happened in the past. There are still 1,000 children who are separated and waiting to be reunited. I'd like your commitment that you're going to continue the effort to reunite them with their parents.
Senator, keeping families together is critically important to me and to this country. I'm concerned about Laken Riley's family, that they no longer have her. I'm concerned about the fact that we have people in this country that don't know where their children are, or people in other countries who sent their children here and they've been lost by this administration. So yes, my focus will be to keep families together. We will uphold our law and we'll make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep our children safe from the trafficking and the drug epidemic that's hit this country.
I'm going to end on an optimistic note and say I take that as a yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your testimony. The nominee has filed responses to biographical and financial questionnaires, answered pre-hearing questions submitted by the committee, and had their financial statements reviewed by the Office of Government Ethics. Without objection, this information will be part of the hearing record, with the exception of the financial data which are on file and available for public inspection in the committee offices. The hearing will remain open until 5 p.m. today, Friday, January 17th, for the submission of statements and questions for the record. This hearing is adjourned.
Thank you, Senator.
Congratulations, that was great. That was great. Yeah.
Ma'am, great job.